either Archie or Lily, and it needs to happen. They need to prove that those children, Meghan and Harry, are not entitled to privacy in this matter. And their privacy is trumped by our right to know that no bastard is going to sit on the throne of this country. All Harry and Meghan need to do is prove to us that she popped those babies out. And that's all they need to do. And if they don't, it is unfair on the children. It's also unfair on the royal family.
As we've seen Meghan Markle put out more and more content connected to her children, whether that's the pregnancy video that made the entire world cringe from secondhand embarrassment.
Doctor looked up, her mouth set in a particular way. Things were getting serious. I said to Meg, my love, you need a push.
Did Meghan Markle use a surrogate? That's been something posited literally for well over 3 years when it comes to her firstborn son Archie and even her daughter Lilibet. And many people even wonder, are their children even real?
Did Buckingham Palace or Prince William set a trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and were they gullible enough to fall into it?
This is absolutely insane that they thought they could get away with it, especially Meghan Markle and Harry. The con of the century, 2 cons of the century in the form of 2 royal children included in the line of succession.
Whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know, the first interviews, we all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home.
That Meghan put on her Instagram feed earlier this week with Archie in the garden. What did you see?
But I had to take my children to Professor Bolstrop, who was the leading expert in the field at that time, at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital it was, and he was going to be investigating. And of course, you know my boys, so you know they're very spirited, that she has that child in a vice-like grip. And it's, you know, if they were a husband and wife team, there are laws now about coercive control.
Something strange has started happening behind Buckingham Palace walls, and it isn't gossip or tabloid noise. It's colder, quieter, and far more deliberate. According to people who work close to the top, senior advisors have launched what they're calling an internal verification review involving Archie and Lilibet. For the monarchy, even considering something like this is extraordinary. The crown avoids uncertainty at all costs. It can weather scandals and bad headlines, but anything that touches the bloodline is another matter entirely.
Everything she's done has only drawn more speculation and brought the controversies back up about how Meghan and Harry have handled all of this, as well as the rumors that perhaps they used a surrogate for one or both of the children.
Questions about lineage make the whole monarchy uneasy because one rule has guided the institution for centuries. The line of succession must never be in doubt. So why touch that rule now? Why poke at a topic the palace usually acts like doesn't exist? Sources say a trail of small inconsistencies finally lined up on a way that couldn't be ignored anymore. Not dramatic errors, but little things: missing information, irregular paperwork, procedures that didn't fit normal royal protocol. On their own, harmless. Together, they formed a pattern.
Where are the children? Where are Harry and Meghan's kids? And do they honestly exist? Now, I know that that's kind of like a little bit conspiratorial, but you know what? I'm down the rabbit hole now since I've accepted the moon bump story. And if the moon bump story was true and she didn't actually have these pregnancies, then is it possible that she has faked having the kids?
And once that pattern reached senior officials, the palace quietly started digging. Their first stop was the earliest official record tied to the Sussex children, Archie's birth certificate. To most people, a birth certificate is a basic document. For the royal household, it's a constitutional record, the first legal proof of identity for someone who could one day sit near the throne. Everything on it should be consistent and permanent, but Archie's certificate didn't stay that way. A few months after his birth, something was quietly changed. Meghan's full legal name, Rachel Meghan Markle. Markle was removed.
California Birth Index, and per the website at the CaliforniaBirthIndex.org, the California Birth Index, or CABI, is a database that stores records of births in California for tracks of birth certificates. putting her full official name of Rachel Meghan Markle, you can see that the official records show
In its place appeared only her title, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. No first name, no last name, just the formal styling approved by the Crown. In royal administration, a change like that is almost unheard of. Someone has to request it, someone has to approve it, and someone has to document it. And there has to be a strong justification. But when the palace team looked back at that moment, nothing lined up. Meghan said the palace ordered the edit. Palace insiders said Meghan's team pushed for it. There was no consistent explanation and, more importantly, no clear paperwork supporting why it happened.
Though Meghan had let it be known she wanted a home birth, it was probably very realistic that her first child at 37, it was going to be born in hospital.
So at the time, Archie Mountbatten Windsor was born May 6, 2019.
For the palace, uncertainty is more dangerous than any controversy. If the document was altered once, why was it necessary? And what else in Archie's early timeline didn't match the usual royal pattern? Those questions pushed the review deeper, back to the day he was born. Once staff pulled the certificate, they began retracing every detail around his arrival. That's when more irregularities appeared. Not scandals, just small things that didn't follow royal systems known for precision. The first red flag involved the announcement.
Meghan and Harry did instead was they did not announce it when Meghan went into labor, for whatever reason. They kept Archie's birth private for over 8 hours. They did not tell people that he was actually born and arrived until 8 hours later. They also issued a confusing press release suggesting Meghan had just gone into labor after Archie had already been born. So they were playing games here with this. And the result was that the media and the public felt misled because they were.
For decades, royal births have followed the same order. The birth is confirmed, medical details are verified, the palace releases an official bulletin, and then the public gets a carefully arranged photo moment. With Archie, the sequence looked reversed. The world heard he was born before any traditional confirmation was issued. Hours went by before details were clarified, and even those were vague. There were no hospital steps, no verified medical statements, and the first appearance days later felt more staged than ceremonial.
They decide, okay, well, we have to come out and show the baby in some way, but we're not coming out to the street. The filthy masses are not going to have anything to do with our kid. So then they show up, and there's Meghan in her white dress with Harry, and he's holding this completely still.
Then came confusion about where the birth actually happened. Early reports pointed to one hospital, later comments suggested another. Behind the scenes, staff struggled to fit the timeline into normal royal routines. Royal births usually involve designated midwives, physicians, and senior officials who witness and certify key moments. Everything is documented because it must be. But once investigators reviewed Archie's timeline, they found gaps. Not enough to accuse anyone of wrongdoing, but enough to question whether the proper process had been followed.
Boggles the mind. I mean, just for titles, for example. So when Archie was first born, they said they didn't want him to have a title. He was going to be a private citizen. I was like, bravo, you understand. He's not going to be a working member of the royal family. He is going to have to live a normal life, get a normal job. That is fantastic. And then it came out later in the Oprah Winfrey interview. Well, they denied him a title and security because he is a mixed race child. And then it was kind of and then later she kind of backtracked.
If Archie's timeline felt blurry, Lilibet's was even more complicated. Archie's unusual paperwork raised concern, but Lilibet's birth introduced uncertainty on a level the palace had never faced. Her arrival was announced entirely by Harry and Meghan's team in California. No British doctors, no royal medical staff, no palace bulletin, no iconic easel outside Buckingham Palace, and not even a confirmation from the royal household. Instead, the public received a polished press release and curated photos. That's fine for celebrities, but not for a child tied to the royal bloodline.
Meghan just went into labor when really Archie had been born for several hours at that point is a foolish game to play. And it only diminished credibility and trust, and it honestly made people kind of mad and irritated about the situation because it's well, why would you do that? Why are you lying to people? Why are you trying to mislead people?
Royal births are normally confirmed by Crown-approved medical professionals. Records are filed immediately, witnesses are logged, the place of birth is verified. But with Lilibet, none of those usual steps appeared anywhere. And when investigators tried piecing together the timeline, the contradictions only grew. Even Meghan's pregnancy photos and Zoom appearances didn't line up clearly. Some suggested she was further along, others not at all. On their own, these things wouldn't matter. Paired with the lack of documentation, they amplified palace concerns. Buckingham Palace stayed silent. No confirmations, no denials, simply watching. But the biggest issue wasn't her birth. It was what came next, the christening.
Harry and Meghan they would refuse to kind of show him. They finally kind of showed him off in South Africa, and it was very much, kind of a display, and she went to the polo match, and again, people wondered because it's like, she just didn't, it was a very stiff way she was holding him. It was just looked odd, and you looked at her and compared her to Kate, and you can't help the comparisons. And Kate is playing with baby Louis, and he's, kissing her, trying on sunglasses, and Meghan does not even look at Louis at all, and Louis is looking at her.
Before addressing the christening, advisors needed to revisit something far more important: the laws defining who is or is not formally recognized as a royal child. That's where the 1917 letters patent came back into focus. It's a dry historical document, but suddenly critically relevant. Written under King George V, it outlines exactly which descendants of the monarch qualify for titles and official recognition. And hidden inside its formal language is a key principle: royal status is not symbolic. It must be documented and verifiable. To be recognized under the crown, a child must meet 3 standards: proven royal lineage, a birth that follows established procedure, and ceremonies conducted within the Church of England. These rules aren't ceremonial traditions. They protect the monarchy from confusion or future disputes.
No longer HRH, was safely delivered of a son, and she and her child are both doing well. So back to the tradition of putting out a framed bulletin or a gilded easel outside Buckingham Palace after royal births has been going on since 1837, so it's a cool tradition. And George, Charlotte, and Louis' easels listed the doctors' names with signatures, birth weight and time, and referenced the royal family. But Archie's notably only included mention of the Queen and the royal family in the wording, but not on the actual document, and then they omitted the signatures from the doctor's presence. Unlike previous notes,
most of the time, these steps are easy because royal births happen inside the UK with witnesses, records, and immediate filings. But with Archie and Lilibet, too many events occurred outside that system. A foreign birth, no royal medical witnesses, unclear timelines, and mismatched documents. That brought the palace to the event that should have confirmed everything, but instead raised the biggest question of all: the christening that had no official record. A christening might look like a simple family moment, but for the monarchy, it carries constitutional weight. It links the child to the Church of England and creates the first formal spiritual and historical record of their identity.
And then the next holiday card we see, I believe it was the famous Lilibet's born, and here's little Archie. And that little kid who's Archie doesn't look anything like the little kid we've seen in the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix that we saw. I don't know who that kid was in the picture, or even Lilibet doesn't look like the picture that they've shown of her. Those kids didn't look the same.
So when Meghan announced that Lilibet had been christened in California, the news immediately raised eyebrows inside the palace. If the ceremony had been conducted under the authority of the Church of England, there would be a clear record: a form, a registry entry, a confirmation from the bishop. Even private ceremonies leave paperwork. But when advisors discreetly checked church records, nothing tied to Lilibet existed. No entry, no signature, no note from the Archbishop's office, not even a private acknowledgement. For any child, that would be unusual. For a child tied to royal succession, it was a constitutional problem. Christening records are meant to remove all doubt, but the palace found nothing confirming Lilibet had been formally entered into the faith central to the monarch. That missing piece pushed Buckingham Palace into its next step, assembling a complete internal file.
Meghan Markle gave birth to Lily because this is what's called plausible deniability. They want to be able to say, hey, we never claimed that she was our daughter in that announcement. They're legally covering their backs. There's just too many unknowns. And then, of course, we have that the doctor that allegedly delivered Lily quit her practice 2 weeks after giving birth to Lily or delivering Lily. That sentence there is missing. That is a vital sentence that Meghan Markle chose not to put in an official statement because she knows she would get into a lot of legal trouble, and she needed plausible deniability.
Once the christening issue surfaced, the palace moved from quiet observation to a structured review. Not public, not dramatic, just a formal internal case file used when something doesn't align with royal precedent. Senior advisors, archivists, constitutional lawyers, and church liaisons were all brought in. Their task wasn't emotional or accusatory. It was simple: rebuild the timeline of Archie and Lilibet's births and compare every part to royal protocol. They created a massive timeline covering birth, births, announcements, documents, ceremonies, statements, and every detail available to the Crown. As they filled in the details, more inconsistencies emerged. Missing witnesses, missing hospital verification, unclear medical involvement, delayed documents, conflicting accounts from Harry, Meghan, and their teams, ceremonies without records, births outside royal oversight, signatures that didn't match standard procedure. None of these issues were explosive individually. Together, they formed a problem the monarchy couldn't brush aside. Uncertainty threatens legitimacy, and legitimacy is the monarchy's foundation. As the file grew thicker, one question became unavoidable. What does this mean for Harry and Meghan? In Montecito, the mood behind the scenes is nothing like the polished images they show. They understand what a royal review truly means, and it's far more serious than bad press. For Meghan, the stakes are enormous. Her entire public identity now rests on the idea of being a modern duchess and mother of royal children, an identity that fuels her projects, partnerships, and brands. A duchess whose children may not be fully recognized by the Crown risks losing the very mystique her image depends on. For Harry, the impact is even more personal. This goes beyond business. It touches the core of who he is. He grew up believing his bloodline mattered, that his children would naturally remain part of the monarchy's future. Now, he may be watching that possibility slip away. Sources say he has called senior royals, upset and emotional, trying to plead his case. But once the palace enters legal territory, feelings don't change anything. The review will continue, and nothing Meghan or Harry says can stop it. Which brings us to the final question. What will the monarchy do now that the file is complete? The Crown protects the institution, not individuals, and 3 possible outcomes are now on the table. The first option is to freeze the children's titles, no removals, no announcements, just no further recognition or ceremonial involvement, a slow fade. The second option is quiet reclassification. Without public explanation, the palace could designate the children as private individuals, gradually reducing their presence in official materials. The third option is the one Meghan and Harry fear most, a formal removal. It's rare, severe, and fully possible if documentation cannot support royal standards. The Crown wouldn't do it out of anger. It would do it to protect the succession. And that's the truth behind this entire review. The monarchy endures, people do not. Meghan and Harry built a brand around royal mystique, but the palace holds the authority, and one signature could change everything. So tell me in the comments, do you think she can still turn this around, or is this the point where everything finally breaks for good? And if you want more deep dives into celebrity chaos, royal scandals, and the biggest Hollywood moments, make sure you're subscribed to Bella Breaks Down, because trust me, the next story is even wilder.